as we look at the Islanders roster right now, the question has to be asked, does this team need more grit and toughness? We'll have that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode of the show, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all off season long, from trade rumors, firings and hirings, free agency, the draft, you name it. We will have it for you right here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. So I wanted to start today with a mailbag question, and this one comes from James, a friend of the show. Hey, Gil, it's James, he writes. I listen to the podcast every day, and I'm really enjoying all the insight you have on the team as a whole and the season we just had. Also, what do the Islanders have to do moving forward to get better? You emphasize often that we need to acquire a sniper and that we also need another puck-moving defenseman. And while I agree with you, I'd like to add a little insight of my own. While watching the Eastern Conference playoffs so far this year, I think it's going to be important to acquire one or two really physical players. When you look at teams like the Panthers, the Rangers, and even the Bruins, a lot of their success comes from their physicality and willingness to muck it up. The Islanders just don't have that, so maybe if we could acquire a guy who is like a Sam Bennett or a Jacob Trouba, you know what I mean? Somebody who could put a hit on big guys and in the open ice or in front of the net, maybe it would create more opportunities for the guys that we do have to get some better shots on goal. And with the salary cap issue we have, maybe it would be easier to get a player or two like that rather than to break the bank on a sniper. Just a thought that I had, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that idea because I think we're a little soft right now to be able to compete with the top teams in the East. Well, James, first of all, thanks for the kind words about the show, and thank you so much for the email and the question, and I think it's a legitimate one. And I'm going to tie what you said in with a couple of other things. Look, pure fighting right now in the NHL is not, it's still a part of the game, and I think to a certain extent it will be for the foreseeable future, maybe forever. But it is not the same way that it was 20 years ago, let's say, where a player would only be able to fight, where they would play 4.5 minutes on the ice and would spend 5 minutes or 7 minutes in a game in the penalty box, but they really couldn't contribute much else. The goon days are more or less over. If you're going to be in the NHL now, you have to be able to skate well. You have to bring something else to the table other than just the ability to use your fists. Now, that's not to say that having some good fighters on the team is not important. But the other thing is this. There's another aspect to physicality that goes beyond just fighting. And I think that is something that is still a part of hockey. And James, you rightfully pointed out, teams like the Rangers and the Panthers have more of that element than the Islanders do. So the question becomes, how do you add that? And I'll add a third element to the mix if you're looking at it. Right now, the Islanders have two of their more physical players in Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck, who are now going to be unrestricted free agents. Both of them are on the older side, and it is a big question, not only as to whether they'll be back with the Islanders, but whether it would be wiser to bring in some younger guys who could fill that role. You could pay them less, and you could probably get roughly the same production out of them as far as, the non physical elements are concerned. But, you're right about what you said about the cap. As far as a sniper costing or a goal scorer, 25, 30 goal guy is going to cost a lot more than a grinder. And I think that's the other element to all of this. And that is, you go back to the 2 years that the Islanders reached the conference final. Part of their identity, and, you go back to the identity line, but part of the Islanders' identity was always that they were a difficult team to play against, that they wore you down with their physicality, that they made it tough to play against them, that even if you beat the Islanders, it wasn't going to be easy. And I think this year we saw less of that. And, I think a guy like Zach Parise during his 2 years with the Islanders certainly contributed to the being difficult to play against. Scott Mayfield could contribute to that. Zdeno Chara, when he was here, could contribute to that. But Mayfield only played 41 games, and he played 40 of them hurt. Matt Martin certainly slowing down a bit as far as his physicality and his willingness and ability to mix it up. Yeah, he still dropped the gloves on occasion, but he was not able to do it at the same rate and with the same consistency that he had earlier in his career. So I think you do need, James, you're right, to add some physicality. And if Matt Martin and or Cal Clutterbuck are not coming back next year, you need to add even more physicality to this team. And it doesn't have to be guys who are just going to drop the gloves. Those days of guys who are just fighters, like I said, are behind us in the NHL with very, very few exceptions. But you've got to be able to have guys who will make it unpleasant to play against this team. And, having more guys like that on this roster, especially in the bottom six, would really make a lot of sense for the New York Islanders. And you're right that it would cost less than adding snipers. Now, the problem is you kind of need both, but there should be no difficulty finding guys who are 22, 24, 25, 26, and, even one or two guys who are on entry level deals who can handle that role and do a solid job of it. And if they can give you 9, 10 goals, 8 goals, let's say, and 20 points, so much the better. Look, Cal Clutterbuck played all 82 games last year. He had 7 goals and 19 points. Matt Martin played 57 games, 4 goals, 8 points. It would be difficult to imagine that the Islanders could not find a couple of younger players who could play that role for the team and not and match that production. Now, they may not be able right away, especially, to match the experience and the leadership qualities that Clutterbuck and Martin have provided for the Islanders in recent years. There's no question about that. But I think that, James, you are right about finding a couple of guys who can grind it out and be more physical and make things less pleasant for the opposition when they are facing the New York Islanders. So, James, thank you again for the email. And again, listeners, viewers, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you want to ask a question that we could use on the show to discuss things, always great to hear from you and to answer your question. So, yes, I think more grit and more toughness would definitely benefit the New York Islanders. I think they've gotten away from that a little bit in the last couple of years. And I think due to age and due to some roster changes, and I think it would really be a good thing to once again be a team that nobody enjoys playing against. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We will continue our player-by-player review of the Islanders season with Matt Martin. We'll talk about where what he accomplished this year, what his role, if any, will be with the team going forward. We'll also talk about the actual contract details that have now been made available with regard to the Marcus Hogberg deal. So we'll break that down. And plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a forward who was with the Islanders in the late 70s and early 80s before being traded to the Colorado Rockies. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And hey, Islander fans, use your knowledge of the NHL. There's plenty of great bets in the Stanley Cup playoffs, whether you want to bet on a game, a series, how well a player will do, or who's going to win the Stanley Cup. So check out all the odds on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we continue our player-by-player review of the Islanders from the 2023-2024 season. And today it is time to discuss Matt Martin, everydayers. You know, yesterday we started off with Oliver Wahlstrom. So we're going to go through the entire roster and talk about what these players did this year, what their role was, and what their role may be in the future with the Islanders, if any. So lots to discuss. Matt Martin, as we mentioned, played in 57 games, and injuries were a factor there. And at times he was even a scratch. Played in 57 games, averaged 9 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time, which is the lowest mark he's had since rejoining the Islanders back in 2018, 2019. He actually played less in only 2 seasons in his career, and those were the 2 years he was with the Maple Leafs. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. He was a +7, which is pretty impressive when you consider the fact that, again, he only had 4 goals and 4 assists and played on a line that was not the most offensively productive. 43 penalty minutes for Matt Martin. He had 48 shots on goal. That's less than 1 shot on goal per game. He did have 151 hits, blocked 29 shots. And again, Matt Martin, you know what you're going to get with Matty Mart when he's healthy and when he's on the ice. He is going to forecheck. He is going to fight to defend his teammates when necessary. Although, again, right now, Matt Martin, he is 35 years old, having just turned 35 on May 8th, so last week. And it is clear that he is slowing down a little bit compared to where he was, uh, 2-3 years ago. And, speed was never the linchpin of Matt Martin's game. But if he starts to slow down, how does that affect his ability to keep up with some of the players he needs to go up against on the ice? That is an issue. Now, Martin is an unrestricted free agent. And while a lot of people expected Matt Martin to retire, and there were even rumors out there on Twitter and even from some members of the media saying, yeah, Matt Martin, this is the last year of his contract. I don't necessarily think he's going to be back. Probably time for him to hang up his skates. But at Getaway Day, Martin essentially said, I don't know who started those rumors, but it wasn't me, and I want to continue to play. And he said he would like to continue to be on the island. So the question is, should the Islanders bring him back? And look, Matt Martin has been a great Islander. He has spent 13 years with this team, 15 years in the NHL. He is 45 games away, incidentally, from 1,000 career games in the National Hockey League. He has been a great teammate. He has been a great part of the community here on Long Island. And he's been a really good Islander. I mean, when you talk about the Islanders of the 2010s and 2020s, you're going to mention Matt Martin as one of those guys who has been a big part of the heart and soul of this team. If Lou Lamoriello decides to bring Matt Martin back, and it would have to be, I would assume, a 1 or 2 year deal, if he does. And I don't think necessarily that they should at this point, because as I said in the first segment, the Islanders, it's not that Matt Martin is going to cost them a lot of money. He could probably play for around $1 million, $1.25 million a year. He played at $1.5 million this past season, but you could probably get somebody to play his role minus the leadership and experience for the league minimum or slightly above it. So there is that to take into consideration. It's a tough decision for the Islanders to make, but I think the right thing to do is to move on and maybe offer Matt Martin some kind of position in the Islanders organization, because I think he kind of deserves that. I think he's been a great player and a great Islander, and that if you offer him a position in the organization, whether it be scouting or coaching or an ambassador, something to that, he stays in the community. He can still be part of the Islanders' culture. He might even be able to help out some of the younger players. But as far as on-ice contributions are concerned, look, health is now a consideration as his body starts to break down from playing a physical style of hockey for all those years. I mean, you don't become one of the all-time hit leaders in the NHL. And again, I know hits have only been an official statistic in recent years, but he has dished out officially 3,849 regular season hits. That doesn't include the playoffs. And it takes a toll on your body. So I get the feeling Matt Martin will not be back with the team this year coming up. If he is, he's going to play that same fourth line role, no question about that. Maybe occasionally kill some penalties as well. But overall, what we are going to see from Matt Martin is more of the same, and hopefully he can stay healthy if he does come back and give you 70 plus games over the course of a season. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. They now finally released the details of Marcus Hogberg's contract that he signed last week with the Islanders. Some interesting things in it, so we'll talk about that. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurers with just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click on the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV and the Free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the Free Fire TV channels app. So the Islanders, now it's been announced as far as, the details for Marcus Hogberg's contract. And just to bring everybody up to date, it's a 2-year deal for the 29-year-old Swedish goaltender. And right now, the 2-year deal each year will have a $775,000 cap hit. So it's a 2-year, $1.5 million deal. And essentially, it's a 2-way contract this coming season. And it guarantees him $550,000, regardless of whether he plays in the NHL or in the minors. And then for the 2025-2026 season, it's a one-way deal, meaning that whether he's in the NHL or the AHL or even the ECHL, if he gets sent down, then basically he'll still get that $775,000. So this coming season, if he's in the minors, he'll make $425,000, but he's guaranteed to make $550,000 by the end of the year. So his pay rate will be $425 in the minors, $775 in the NHL. And if he makes less than $550,000 because he's in the minors all season or almost all season, he'll get the difference at the end of the year. Whereas in 2025, 2026, it'll be a one-way $775,000 deal, regardless of where he plays. And again, they bring in Hogberg to give the team insurance. He is the new, he is basically the new Corey Schneider, where he's a guy with NHL experience who will start the season, barring injury to either Semyon Varlamov or Ilya Sorokin. He'll start the year in the AHL, be able to mentor any young goalies who the Islanders have in the AHL, because he has international experience, AHL experience, NHL experience. He's 29 years old. And if there are injuries, here is a guy who the Islanders hopefully will feel better about bringing him up. And if they need to start him for a game or 2 games or 3 or whatever it is, they don't feel like he's overmatched. And we saw that hurt the Islanders last year when Semyon Varlamov was injured. They recalled Ken Appleby to be the backup goalie, but they would not play Appleby except in a blowout game where he played the third period of one game after the Islanders were already behind. And Ilya Sorokin got tired for starting, 14 games in a row and playing in 17 games in a row. It tired him out. We saw him wear out as the season went on. And part of it was because of that stretch, plus all the shots the Islanders were facing. You sign Hogberg, and you're trying to prevent a reoccurrence of that problem that ended up hurting the Islanders because their number one goalie, even though Semyon Varlamov did a darn good job filling in down the stretch and in the playoffs, your franchise goalie, who you're paying more than $8 million a year for the next 8 years, didn't have his A game and was kind of exhausted physically and mentally. And that was costly to this hockey team. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is the 66th birthday of former Islanders center Steve Tambellini. Tambellini, a native of Trail, British Columbia, first round pick of the Islanders, 15th overall back in 1978. He had some incredible seasons with the Lethbridge Broncos of the Western Junior League. His last year in 66 games, 75 goals, 155 points, which is just an incredible performance. Made his NHL debut playing one game for the Isles in 78-79. Came on in 79-80 to play 45 games. But then in the 80-81 season, he had 19 goals and 36 points in 61 games for the Islanders before being traded to the Colorado Rockies in the deal that sent Chico Resch to Colorado. He played for the Rockies again, had a 29-goal, 59-point season in 81-82, and was a member of the initial Devils team in 82-83. Later played for Calgary and Vancouver before finishing his career in Austria in 1989-90. Tambellini played in 553 career NHL games, had 160 goals, 310 points, and 105 penalty minutes. Only played in 2 playoff games, had an assist, both of those coming with the Flames in 1984. One of his better games as an Islander, and it may be one of the reasons that the Colorado Rockies, who are now the Devils, wanted to acquire him. We go back to December 30th, 1980. Islanders already the defending Stanley Cup champions. They host the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies have Hardy Astrom, Don Cherry's favorite goalie, in net, while Billy Smith is the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, Steve Tambellini in the first period assists on a goal by Bob Nystrom. Then later on in the period, with the Islanders up 3-0, Tambellini scores, assists to Bob Nystrom and Clark Gillies. And then in the second period, Tambellini again assisting on a goal, this time by Clark Gillies. Bob Nystrom, the other assist. Islanders crush the Rockies by a score of 9-3. Steve Tambellini, a goal, 2 assists. He's a +1. He had 4 shots on goal, and he did have the game winner. Islanders took 47 shots on goal in this game, led by Butch Goring, who had 6. And every Islanders player, with the exception of goaltender Billy Smith, had a shot on goal in this game. So Steve Tambellini, who turns 66 today, he is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders. We will go with Mike Riley for tomorrow. So we'll talk about Riley and his contributions to the team and what he may do next year if indeed the Islanders do re-sign him. Make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.